Nestled within the streets of O-Block lies an atmosphere fraught with danger, where the air is thick with tension and the sound of sirens echoes through the night. This neighborhood, born out of a history marred by systemic neglect and economic disparity, has become synonymous with the struggles of urban life in Chicago's South Side. At the heart of O-Block's challenges are the pervasive influence of gangs, particularly the Black Disciples, BDs, whose presence looms large over the community. For many youth growing up in this environment, gang affiliation can feel like a foregone conclusion, a path laid out before them by circumstance rather than choice. The allure of belonging and protection that gangs offer can be enticing, especially in neighborhoods where opportunities are scarce and violence is a daily reality. The city of Chicago is ultimately responsible for these deaths that occur on the streets of Chicago as the citizens pay taxes to their elected government. But the city fails at every aspect of creating economic stability for the city left fortunate. Instead, they corral them into places like Block, insure them without their knowledge, and give them food stamps and shelter for seemingly free, instead of jobs and job training, so they can uplift themselves from the hands of gangs and crime. The low-income housing in O-Block, like many similar neighborhoods across the United States, presents a multitude of dangers and challenges for its residents. Systemic racism and economic inequality contribute to the perpetuation of poverty and crime in these communities, creating an environment where residents face significant obstacles in accessing resources and opportunities for social mobility. The lack of investment in infrastructure and social services exacerbates the issues, leaving residents vulnerable to the influence of gangs and criminal activities. Additionally, the presence of gangs in these neighborhoods further compounds the dangers, as they often use low-income housing areas as safe havens for their operations. This environment not only perpetuates cycles of violence and crime, but also divides families as they navigate the complex dynamics of safety and survival in a neighborhood where danger lurks around every corner. The systemic challenges faced by residents of low-income housing in O-Block highlight the urgent need for comprehensive social and economic reforms to address the root causes of poverty and inequality in these communities. The impact of gang activity on the youth of O-Block is profound and far-reaching. It perpetuates a cycle of violence and trauma that leaves lasting scars on the community. Young people are often recruited into gangs at a tender age, lured by promises of respect and status within their peer groups. However, this sense of belonging comes at a steep price, as gang involvement brings with it the constant threat of violence and the ever-present specter of incarceration or death. The genesis of O-Block itself is rooted in a history of disinvestment and neglect. Originally conceived as a solution to the city's housing shortage, the neighborhood quickly fell into disrepair as economic opportunities dwindled and infrastructure crumbled. Over time, it became a breeding ground for poverty, crime, and gang activity, a cycle that has proven difficult to break. Despite the challenges it faces, O-Block is also a community brimming with resilience and determination. Residents band together in the face of adversity, working tirelessly to create a brighter future for themselves and their children. Grassroots organizations and community leaders strive to provide support and resources to those in need, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. O-Block got its name from the murder of O.D. Perry. Let me explain. January 12, 2011. A gang war was building up to the point of no return. On that tragic day, a young man by the name of Shondell Gregory, known by his peers as Tuka, was murdered. Tuka was at the bus stop in 63rd and St. Lawrence in the Woodlawn neighborhood in Southside Chicago with two other witnesses awaiting a bus. A dark-colored vehicle pulled up. A passenger who was wearing a half mask jumped out and shot Shondell Gregory, aka Tuka, several times about the body. A masked gunman shot a 15-year-old boy to death. Wednesday night, at a bus stop in the West Woodlawn neighborhood on the south side, authorities said this would create Tukaville, better known as 63rd. That one death would become infamous as a pivotal moment in the gang violence in Chicago, and even more, for the life of a Chicago native by the name of O.D. Perry. Because on August 10th, 2011, it was a regular day in the neighborhood as it pertains to the youths accustomed to the dangers of the region in which gang territory has been the cause of many altercations. People were on their normal commute along King's Doctor, where the Parkway Gardens was situation. Some walking, driving, others riding bikes up and down the street past Sammy's Grill and Restaurant. No one could predict the tragedy which was about to transpire. O.D. Perry was one around the area on that date. It was nighttime. O.D. Perry was out and about in the neighborhood. He was no stranger to the area as many knew him to be, someone with great respect and notoriety in the gang culture. O.D. was often described by his peers as quiet and to himself, but behind that calm demeanor was a silent killer who was often actively involved in criminal activities that injured and stole the lives of his rivals. His many mugshots tell of the consequences that come with walking this dangerous path. However, this particular lifestyle is the reason why he was in harm's way. Sooner or later, it's the end result of many youths led astray by the gang culture. Mix this with his affiliation to the Black Disciples, an opposing gang to the Gangster Disciples, he became a prime target of revenge for the assassination of Tuka. The night lingered on. 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m., 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m. O.D. Perry decided to go to the store and got on his bike and did just that. Him, along with his friend, entered the Swisher Sweet store. 11:34 p.m. O.D. Perry exists. The store, gets on his bicycle and begins riding northbound on MLK Dr. Moments. Later, at 11:35 p.m., shots were heard ringing out throughout the area. His friend would look out of the store in the northbound direction which O.D. Perry rode off towards. That's when he saw O.D. fall from his bike onto the ground before getting up and attempting to escape, only to fall back down. After around 10, more shots were let off. A key witness at the scene further describes how O.D. Perry was attacked and what happened thereafter. According to his account, he saw O.D. Perry riding northbound as well on MLK Doctor on his bicycle, but also noticed an African-American male standing near the bus stop along with an equally colored female and her child. As O.D. Perry approached, the black male stepped out and shot him, causing O.D. to fall from his bicycle. At this point must be where O.D. Perry would have tried to recollect himself and flee, but as stated by the eyewitness, the offender continued his pursuit by approaching O.D., shooting him again before fleeing eastbound on 64th St. According to other gang-affiliated members, at the time, like reformed gangster J. Hood, one of O.D. Perry's friends named T. Roy was present at the time trying to keep him awake and alive after being shot. He alleges T. Roy was the one who heard O.D. Perry's last words, "Damn, they got me, bro." Returning to the eyewitness statements, he also vaguely recalled another offender partaking in the attack, but was unable to recall where they came from or where they would have escaped to. Officers would respond to dispatcher's call of a person shot. Upon arrival, the responding officers would discover O.D. Perry laying in the street, injured by what they believed was one gunshot, wound about the right side of the neck. Bleeding out on the floor, medical personnel on site at the moment sprung into action to save his life, rushing him to Stroger Hospital. The time was counting down on the clock. O.D. Perry was literally fighting for his life. Once at the hospital, the attending physician by the name of Dr. Wiley, along with his medical staff, made efforts to treat O.D. Perry, who was listed in critical condition. That's when matters took a turn for the worst. What was thought to be only one gunshot wound turned out to be two, after Dr. Wiley and the medical staff discovered a second gunshot wound about O.D. Perry's left shoulder. They expended every possible avenue to try and preserve his life, but their attempts proved futile. O.D. Perry's gunshot wounds became fatal and he was pronounced deceased at 12:18 and August 11th, 2011. According to the autopsy, O.D. Perry's official cause of death was due to multiple gunshot wounds. One bullet entered the front mid-left side of the neck, exiting near the upper left arm, and a second gunshot wound entered and exited the mid-left buttock. News of O.D. Perry's passing would shake the community. It was one of the first major deaths due to the gang violence many young affiliates experienced that time. It sent shockwaves throughout, leaving scars that some say, to this day, they still struggle with overcoming. Investigators were now tasked with trying to piece together the brazen murder, but what's more, they had to operate with a sense of urgency in the air, as they were fearful of the impending retaliation waiting to happen. Rumors began circulating that O.D. Perry's passing was from a rival gang retaliating for the death of Sean Gregory, aka Tuka. It's alleged that in order to make a statement, they assassinated O.D. Perry on Tuka's birthday. O.D. Perry's rivals wasted no time, setting the trend of disrespecting his death. Highly respected and now murdered gang affiliate FBG Duck often disrespected O.D. Perry's death along with other lives they claimed. Continuing the taunts, rivals engaged in a remorseless yet popular trend among the gang culture. It was as a badge of honor to be the reason that the persons they were at war with had to change the name of their location. Everyone wanted to take credit for O.D. Perry's murder as if it was a trophy to be worn, but the reality is, to them and the lifestyle they lived, it was. The main suspect responsible wasn't an adult, nor even a male, but a woman who is rumored to have earned the name, the female assassin, Gakira Baines. These speculations became even more solidified when she emerged in pictures posing with O.D. Perry's famed firearm. More credibility began swirling around from her affiliates, giving her along with her close friend and partner in crime. Buddha the credit for creating the name O Block. This hinted at the idea that they were involved in O.D. Perry's murder. One such gang affiliate went by the name FBG Wooski. Still, it was all speculation, but that would change with the release of official police documents on the murder of O.D. Perry. Within it, investigators firstly interviewed Chicago Transit Authority workers, CTA. One CTA janitor recalled seeing two male blacks run from the area of the shooting and enter a silver four-door vehicle, possible a Chevy Malibu or Impala. A CTA elevator repairman who was seated in his truck at the time of the shooting echoed similar accounts as given by the janitor. Neither of the witnesses could pick the suspect out of a photo lineup, but the smoking gun in the case would come in the form of a confidential informant. On August 4th, 2016, detectives would interview a third-party witness to O.D. Perry's homicide, who stated that he was friends with the killers, who he named as Gakira Barnes, and a new suspect, Rodney Stewart, aka Bostrell. The CI stated they were all in the same gang, the Gyro City fraction of the Gangster Disciples. According to case documents, the CI recalled personal conversations he had with both Stewart and Barnes about the homicide, and they both admitted being the ones who shot and killed O.D. Perry. October 15, 2016, detectives re-interviewed a past witness at the scene, and he also positively IDs both Stewart and Gakira as the shooters, stating they shot O.D. Perry, then fled in a silver vehicle. Given the evidence obtained, the case was closed, labeling Bostrell and KI as the main suspects. Unfortunately, they both had already lost their lives to gun violence by rivals, so they couldn't be apprehended and tried for the murder. In honor of O.D. Perry's life, Parkway Gardens, which was known by the name Week City by gang members, became then known as the infamous O Block. The murders of Tuka and O.D. Perry went on to spark even more outrage in the city between two gang fractions in particular. STL, EBT, renamed Tukaville, and YIC City, now renamed O Block. Rest in peace, O.D. Perry and Shondell Gregory. You can't talk about O Block without talking about T. Roy, King Von's best friend. Fearless, dangerous, op shooter. T. Roy was all three and was a top hitter in O Block. It takes a certain level of savagery to gain that much respect and strike that much fear in the opposition. According to his best friend King Von, T. Roy was the definition of street. So how did they catch him lacking? New images and photos emerged of the hit that took his life, and we're going to take a look at that and his time in the streets that made him Chiraq's Rambo. The story of the legend began on October 30th, 1993. James Johnson, aka T-Roy, grew up in Parkway Gardens in the infamous O Block with his mom's, pops, sister, 2 brothers, Slutty and HK and cousins, Eli, Lil Mario, and Zelmuna. Already growing up in the Black Disciple stronghold in the city, his life was likely to take the route of the streets, but he may have had a chance until he met up with other Chiraq youngins like Chief Keef, who he became real cool with, remaining tight even down to when the ops took his life. In fact, T-Roy is rumored to have been a shooter of Keef, and Keef hasn't done nothing but add evidence to this in tracks like No Reason, where he spits the bars, "T-Roy got my strap, he gon' blast for no reason," and Self with the lines, "T-Roy got a gun that's bigger than him, and he gon' blow that B all by himself. He don't miss, he gon' leave the right one left." While Keef was his homie, there were other kids from various sets that attended Diet as well. Just Blow 600 and THF 46, Slushy, and Front Street Quono, who was one of the early ones with Keef rapping in the cafeteria during lunch. Sadly, he would survive one shooting only to be chased and murked by cops years later. T-Roy was a product of the streets, and by how he moved and operated, he was built for it. Short, but packs a punch both with his fists and his strap. Oftentimes, he'd make it known that if you run up on him, he's going to end your life without hesitation. This dangerous demeanor brought him a lot of respect in the hood. His name just had that kind of weight to it. One of the few dudes who could roll with a member of an op set and not be confronted or run down on. This was the case with him, and 151 Aero T-Roy and Aero were cool. Even if O Block and 151 was locked in their beef, T-Roy had so much pull in the streets that he was even able to guarantee Aero safety when he came over to their hood. T-Roy would eventually cross paths with King Von, and the two became close homies. Sadly, Vaughn would be held up behind bars in 2011 and wouldn't be back out until 2012. T-Roy on the outside held it down and was always shouting "Free the gang." All this was before Weak City went through the change that also changed T-Roy into the bloodthirsty savage he became. This began with the loss of a number of his homies, the first being O.D. Perry in August 2011. But the losses would keep on piling, pushing T-Roy further and further to the brink. Sheroid of the O was the next to fall. It was the hit that turned Bostrel into something of legends. In 2012, he spotted Sheroid from across the street in the 6400 block of South King Drive, and with a laser beam on the strap, he took Sheroid top off with one shot. Police discovered Sheroid lying on the street with a single gunshot wound to the head. He would later pass away at the hospital. K.I. and Bostrel pushed T-Roy's buttons by insulting his slain homies. Even FBG Duck and Ruga were in on the fun, dissing Sheroid on their diss track Expose Me remix. T-Roy was burning with anger. Mix that with the jabs at his dead homies, and the Chiraq Rambo was born. His first target to drop was the unlucky victim Marlon Monroe, aka Lil Doc, of Tukaville. April 28, 2012. Lil Doc was at his aunt's woodlawn building doing some painting when he took a break to hit up the convenience store to grab a drink. As he entered the store, it's alleged that it was T-Roy along with twins Cortez and Courtney of Tyamb, who pulled up from outside and dumped on him, hitting Lil Doc. It was some hours later that a 16-year-old relative found him in the 6300 block of South St. Lawrence Avenue slumped. But that wasn't enough. There were more get-backs to be made, and T-Roy was spinning and spinning and spinning. He didn't forget Sheroid and exacted his revenge on his killer, Bostrel. Bostrel, almost sensing T-Roy was hot on his trail, tried to get out of the streets. He bought a bus ticket to leave Chiraq and head to Iowa to start a new life. But once the Chiraq Rambo has his sights set on you, then it's curtains. On November 8th, 2012, just 2 days before he was to leave Chicago, Bostrel was found face down in an alley in the 2600 block of West 83rd Street with a shot to the back of the head. It's rumored that a shorty was used to lure Bostrel to the alley, where instead he met with T-Roy, who ended him. T-Roy was ripping his ops apart, and his name began to be more feared with every body dropped. He was stretching dudes out for real, and often was out lurking for more ops. It was GDK on everything. His ops were dying and mothers were left crying. But none of those tears could bring her son Bostrel back. It was only a matter of time before Balance had to return to the war zone, and T-Roy and O-Block took a major loss when J-Money was murked. Word is that on September 2nd, 2013, J-Money was set up, believing he was meeting up with a girl in the 6600 block of South Rhodes Avenue in Woodlawn. But instead, K.I. and her homie was waiting in the cut. They would pop out and open fire, hitting J-Money about the body and head. Just like T-Roy, K.I. was hurting from her losses and used the moment to get her jokes in to really eat at T-Roy. That's why these stores are like 2 in 1. So, while he discussed King Von, you kinda can't without mentioning T-Roy because, but even for an assassin, there's an operative that will hunt them down. That operative was a group this time: T-Roy, King Von, and Big A. April 11th, 2014. K.I. would be hit 9 times in the mouth, neck, and chest before running and collapsing on a neighbor's doorstep, and past K.I. would succumb to her injuries at Northwestern Memorial Hospital after fighting for her life. There have been a long debated discussion of whether T-Roy physically had a part to play in the hit, or was he at the time incarcerated. Because on the day the hit was carried out, Vaughn posted this to Twitter, suggesting that T-Roy was locked up. But that could have also meant that T-Roy is going hard in the streets and Vaughn needed to up his game on the ops because they had sort of like a competition rivalry to see who could catch the most bodies. But even if he didn't pull the trigger, Vaughn was his mans and K.I. took J-Money and dissed their dead homie. So it comes like T-Roy would still be a driving force behind the hit because of how much his homies knew he wanted her gone. In over 300 pages of a later released document, authorities list Vaughn as the suspect in the shooting, but lacked the evidence to prove it. T-Roy was doing damage in the streets, but he was also fighting cases behind closed doors. He was a known hitter to law enforcement and was arrested a number of times while terrorizing the ops. Even though T-Roy had a son to raise, he was back out op hunting and caught his next victim, Stunner from Suwu TTB. June 8, 2013, Frederick Taylor, aka Stunner, was on the slip ramp between 71st Street and 75th Street on the southbound side of the Dan Ryan Expressway with another woman and man in the vehicle. Between 1 and 1:10 a.m., another whip pulled up with T-Roy, Boss Money, and BJ up the pole, sending shots into the vehicle, wetting up Stuna and hitting the female passenger in her chest. Both were transported to Advocate Christ Medical Center where Stuna succumbed to his wounds. The woman and the other male occupant would make it out with their lives. T-Roy took pride in his bodies. It's crazy how dudes take a life and laugh and get excited talking on it. In this vid, you can hear T-Roy mocking Stuna's death, saying, "They will not stun me. No, I keep that 33. T-Roy got him another one, but everyone has their day, and T-Roy's day finally came. February 14th, 2017. T-Roy was out, doing what he does best, finding and murking ops, and one op in particular was on his radar, TB from Taekwon World. Just about a month before, TB dropped the disrespectful track Taekwon Way that took aim at every op. T-Roy would go to a popular area where TB was often posted up. Reports state that, about 11:55 a.m., James Johnson, aka T-Roy, went into a store on 71st Street. At first, it was believed to be this shoe store, but surveillance pics from inside the store leans more towards it being the store beside it. T-Roy entered and was followed inside by another person, TB. He was caught lacking while trying to catch his op lacking. Pics from inside shows T-Roy standing behind an unknown person and can't get right, with the stripped pants, while TB in all black is walking up, hand in jacket, with the pole tucked. Next, T-Roy drops to the floor the moment TB blicks him with the pole. Now take a look at this pic, with can't get right, and TB beside Duck. Their clothes matched the description from the pics. T-Roy was a fighter. He tried to hang on, but he passed away at Northwestern Memorial Hospital after being in critical condition from the gunshot wound to the chest. Enraged by the passing of his brother, HK was on a warpath to get back and call it fate, but he caught Teritai Mubarak Barry, aka TB, lacking around the exact area as his brother, and murked him with a headshot living up to his name, Headshot King. T. Roy's other brother, Slutty, actually met his end the night Vaughn passed. He was allegedly one of the men who shot Lil Tim in his leg. If you check the footage closely, you can see a man walk up over Lil Tim with something in his hand